representing all of you today. We're sending a message loud and clear. So remember that. You're part of something huge. We all play a role in this. From me to everyone involved here, we're all equal. And we're all doing the same thing. And I'm so proud to be part of this incredible movement. And I hope you are too. All right, let's get this going. I've got a good friend of mine here today. Many of you know her from the movie Parent Trap and from the TV show Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll with my Bostonian friend, Dennis Leary. Go Red Sox. All right, and this way? Hey, can you hear me better now? All right, so Elaine Hendricks was in the movie Parent Trap many years ago, and Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll with Dennis Leary, like I said. I know her as a fierce animal rights activist. I met her carrying a monkey off a truck that we saved from a lab in New Jersey. That's how I met her. She's awesome, and I'm incredibly proud to introduce my good friend, Elaine Hendricks.
Bob Ingersoll, everyone. One of my heroes. Hey, I'm here. I'm preaching to the choir, and look at the size of this choir. As an actress, it's my job to tell stories, and I took that job very seriously years ago when I heard Viktor Frankl tell his stories in his book Man's Search for Meaning. And he talked about the one day a month off that they had. They pushed together their benches and reenacted their Yiddish theater together. And it was at that moment I said, storytelling is imperative to the human race. And now more and more it's coming out, one of the greatest distinctions we have over other species is our ability to tell stories. So for each one of us, if we go and we continue to tell our stories and tell the stories of the animals, we will continue to change the world in a positive, loving, compassionate direction, just like we are doing. My story, I sat down, it's been about 12 years ago now, and I said I wanted to find a platform because some of my work was becoming really public, and I said of all the causes that I get involved with and all the things that matter to me, what is my passion? What is my deepest passion? And I sat down and accidentally watched an Undercover Fur video. It was that moment. My boyfriend at the time, I was like, honey, I'm selling my car. It's got leather interior. I'm cleaning out all of our cleaning products because they were tested on animals. I'm getting rid of all my leather. I wasn't wearing fur anyway. I bought new makeup. I completely changed my life. I had already been vegetarian since 1995. I re-upped, became vegan, and now here I am with you, marching through New York to be the voice for those who don't have voices. So what do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? I love you, New York. I love you, animal activists. Thank you so much.
Hey, one more time, Elaine Hendricks. All right, now I get another chance to introduce one of my heroes, the co-founder of Toronto Pig Save. Many of you have worked with this incredible human being. And without saying a lot, I'm going to let her speak for herself. Ladies and gentlemen, Anita Krantz.
Hi, thank you. Toronto Pig Save started 8 years ago when I adopted a dog, Mr. Bean, and walked on Lakeshore and saw pigs looking out of trucks with fear in their eyes. And then we started Toronto Pig Safe. And the slaughterhouse in downtown Toronto was 5 minutes from where I lived. So it was super easy to do 3 vigils a week. And we did that every week, and we did over 1,000 vigils in Toronto. The inspiration for us include Leo Tolstoy, Gandhi, Cesar Chavez, Saul Alinsky, Lois Gibbs, and other love-based community organizers. And our main strategies are bearing witness, love-based community organizing, and using a variety of tactics. Tolstoy defined the moral duty to bear witness as, when you see a suffering creature, don't succumb to the initial desire to flee from the suffering one, but on the contrary, come closer, as close as you can to her, and try to help her. So usually we bear witness in a partial way. We go to slaughterhouses and we give water and food to the animals, but then they go to slaughter. But sometimes we rescue them. Each year there are hundreds of animals that are rescued by the Save movement. I invite each of you to bear witness in your community. Find out if there's a slaughterhouse or live market near where you live, and either join an existing group or create a new Save. And I'll give you an example of the slaughterhouses and live markets in New York City. There are 3 live markets in Brooklyn and Queens, which we went to yesterday. One is in Brunswick neighborhood in Brooklyn, and it includes Kikuriki live poultry and Dubao live poultry on Nicholas Street. We bore witness yesterday to goats, chickens, rabbits, baby calves. And the animals were protecting each other. There was a goat in the corner of the kill pen that was sort of looking out for the other goats and calves, right next to the slaughterhouse, slaughter floor. There are 85 live markets in New York City. There are 32 in Brooklyn. There are 30 in Queens, 3 in uptown Manhattan, including La Granja in Harlem, which we've held a number of vigils there. There are 18 in the Bronx, including 5 in the South Bronx, and there's 1 on Staten Island. There's an opportunity here to hold vigils at each of these live markets. There should be 85 chapters of Save groups in New York City. Imagine that. So if you live in one of those neighborhoods and you live around the corner from a live market, please start a chapter. There are currently 5 AV chapters in the 5 boroughs of New York City. Soon there will be hundreds in each of the neighborhoods of New York City. And eventually we will have thousands of disruptions in New York cities. So we need to do all these things and build a mass-based movement, and it's up to us. We each have so much power. In a love-based community approach, each person is a leader. So let's all be leaders and organize. Thank you.
Which includes extreme, relentless confinement of horses, whipping, drugging, doping, buying and selling and trading, and basically dumping. You can go to horseracing.com for more information about that. As you can see, there are people. There's a young man going past us now talking about the regulation of chemicals that are used for animal testing in science. You're watching ACT.TV's live coverage of the Animal Rights March here in New York City. We are standing at the corner of University Place and 8th Street in what is termed the Village, and where NYU, New York University, is. And you can see there are thousands of people. If you've been watching this coverage, there are thousands of people marching for animal rights. Now, there are different groups who are supporting different ways to be humane to animals, including in our food system, in our entertainment. There's a lot of vegans here. The vegans have discussed earlier, if you've been watching, that 99% of all meat, eggs, and dairy products produced today come from factory farms. And that is a problem. There's a lot of asking people to, become vegans. We're in front of the vegan people right now, as you see, and what they're saying is that better health outcomes come with plant-based diets. According to a 2002 study by the National Institute of Health, vegetarian men and women live longer, and these groups are saying that less animals are obviously abused. If you don't know about the factory farm system, I would suggest looking it up. That's if you can stand it. It's actually really horrible. You could just Google it. But basically, the animals are confined. They're treated inhumanely, and they are drugged. And basically, they're not treated well, and then they become part of our food system, and a lot of the things that they suffer for then come down the line in the food system. I'm sure there was discussion about that at the top of the show. Again, you're watching Act TV's live coverage of the Animal Rights March here in New York City. There have been animal rights marches happening all throughout the weekend for the last, I would say several days. The UK had their largest march ever, which I think totaled maybe 10,000 marchers.
Do you see the red smoke? The flare?
Can I have it? Can I have that so I can read it?
Yeah, I'm holding it up. That's fine, sorry.
Okay. What is that red stuff, Rebecca?
A flare?
There's a flare being lit, as you can see,
I think.
which is very. First of all, it keeps the mosquitoes off, which I appreciate, but it's interesting. There are signs going by, compassion begins on your plate, and these people are imploring folks to consider how they get their food, where they get their food, and they're suggesting people become vegan in order to have a more just world for animals. I have to say, I cover a lot of marches, and it's been very difficult to see, it's been very, very interesting to see this many people coming out for animal rights. Obviously, animal rights are not any people come out for marches for all kinds of reasons, often because they are being personally affected by the issue, but all of these people are out here because other sentient beings are being affected by the system in which we live, and I think that is really interesting. Again, you're watching Act TV's live coverage of the Animal Rights March here in New York City. There are so many different groups coming by, including groups who are against horse racing. I thought that was kind of interesting. They're making a plea to implore people who bet to reconsider and not place any more bets, because if there's no more races, then there'll be no more kills and no more abusing of the bodies of the horses, including things like relentless confinement. I saw myself once a horse that was confined to a very small stable, and he was crazy. He had lost his mind. It was just absolutely torturous for that animal. Very difficult to watch from where I was coming from myself. Anyway, also, you can go to horseracingwrongs.com to get more information about that. There are a lot of, people trying to make educational, trying to get the word out about, for example, that certified humane is actually a myth. Some of the groups here from humanemyth.org were basically talking about the growing awareness of the injustices occurring at the large-scale industry and farm animal operations, and how many compassionate citizens are increasingly seeking alternatives. And there are labels like cage-free, free-range, humane, grass-fed, organic, and local. And first of all, it makes it very, very difficult to pick eggs and be or whatever other food and be responsible at the grocery store. But this group basically says that those who are willing to pay a higher price can enjoy dairy and eggs and meat from small-scale humane farms that treat animals with respect. You're watching right now the animal rights march in New York City, where I would say several thousand people have been marching down the streets after a large rally, and you're watching ACT TV's live coverage.
And compadre Paul Gilboa.
Not just everybody in the house, but 500,000 people in Israel changed their diet because of the Big Brother show. Yeah, it will be nice. Thank you. English is not my language, and my name is not Eran Morad from Israel, but everything is going to be fine. Loud. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me in the back? Nietzsche said, if you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you. Almost 8 years ago, I agreed to look down into the abyss that for me was my part in the animal's hell. Since then and until now, I haven't stopped looking down into the abysses of sadness and suffering, and they look back at me. I never imagined how that change back then would be so significant, but it turned out to be the greatest and the most meaningful change of my entire life. Thank you. I was sure the moment I would tell the animal stories, people would agree to change. And while some do, the majority of people are brainwashed, and I have had to experience and witness the dark side of humanity over and over again. When I understood that we had to create a radical change from the base up, deep in the roots, I also understood the enormous responsibility on my shoulders. The hell endured by animals doesn't exist because of us anymore. Thank you. But we must be their voice and take full and wise responsibility for them. I knew that I wasn't supposed to wait for anyone to do it. I knew that that someone is me. That someone is you. We are the someone we have been waiting for. We are the ones who will bring about change. Yeah, we are. I don't wait for anyone to want to hear or to see the truth. The truth is there, naked for all to see, cold, cruel, and full of suffering. That's how we founded the largest grassroots movement in Israel, Total Liberation, with the slogan, thank you, with the slogan, always and everywhere. It isn't just a slogan, it's reality, because somehow it's never the right time or place. But we don't ask anyone where or when, because it's always the right time and place. That's also how we founded the Glass Walls Association, the largest project anywhere, documenting thousands of farms all over Israel, so that nobody can say it doesn't happen here. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and every opportunity I got, I took. It wasn't always easy, but in the end, it was always worth it. For almost 8 years, I have been going in and out of the jaws of hell, time and time again. There is nothing more difficult than turning my back and leaving them there to their fate, knowing the physical and the mental anguish they suffer, which ends only in the slaughterhouse, the place where billions of miserable innocent beings are butchered. I've been doing it for 8 years and it works. We reinvent ourselves over and over, looking for new and creative and effective ways to bring about the most extensive change in the consciousness that humanity has to go through. The concept that animals are not ours to use, not ours to eat, not to wear, not to use as entertainment, not ours to be donated to science. They are just like us. They deserve to live their lives as they are, free, fearless, and worthy of family and protection. I have seen with my own eyes tens of thousands of animals sentenced to death moments before the knife slit their throat. I have seen endless mothers as the dearest thing to them, their baby, was snatched from them. I have seen babies trembling and crying for their mothers. Each and every one of them is etched upon every cell in my body with one promise: not to live, not to back down, not to give up.
March here in New York City, where thousands of people have taken to the streets to stop animal cruelty in a number of areas. I'm here with a marcher. Can you introduce yourself and say if you're from an organization?
My name is Mary Finelli. I'm the founder and president of Fishfield.
Can you talk about what Fishfield does?
Yes, our organization primarily works to inform the public that science has shown that fish are sentient, they do feel fear and pain, and they're killed in far greater numbers than any other category of animals used for food. The way they're caught is so inhumane and so indiscriminate. They're also catching dolphins and seals, turtles, even whales and birds. Human slavery is rampant in the fishing industry. A lot of that catch is sold here. It's basically untraceable and all for something that's not even good for us. It's got mercury, dioxins, parasites, plastic, cholesterol, saturated fat. It's definitely not a healthful food. All the nutrients that we get from fish and from animals in general, we can easily get from plant sources. For people who like seafood, there are vegan versions of virtually any kind of seafood you can imagine. On our website, we have hundreds of recipes, links to companies that make vegan seafood products. Anything you have a hankering for, there's a vegan version that's better for us, better for the other animals, better for the environment. It just makes sense.
Can I ask you a question? Much of what is being discussed here is how veganism is becoming ubiquitous, and we're not going to be able to avoid it it's becoming a mainstream thing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It really is, and it's a wonderful thing. I mean, just in the past few decades, vegan has become a household word. Like I said, there are vegan versions of virtually any kind of food you can imagine. It's not uncommon to see vegan recipes in newspapers and magazines. Restaurants there are entire vegan restaurants becoming more and more popular. So it's really
in the regular restaurants, they pretty much all have a vegan option these days.
And they know the word vegan, they put it on the menu. So it's here, it's the future, it's the way to go for our sake, for the other animals' sake, for the environment. It really does just make sense.
Given the fact that the environment is in such trouble, don't you think that going vegan is going to be sooner or later? It's going to be forced on us as a population.
It really is. I mean, the world just cannot sustain animal agriculture or fishing for the population and the expected population. And there are even governments that are promoting plant-based diet, plant-sourced diets.
Really? Which ones?
China is urging their population to cut down on meat. A lot of health authorities are urging people to cut down on animal products for our own health. Environmental organizations are urging people to adopt a vegan diet. So it really is here. It just makes sense. It's way past time. Its time has definitely come.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. You're watching ACT TV's live coverage of the Animal Rights March here in New York City. It's a perfect street that they chose to march down. This is one of the last remaining streets of the old village. We're walking past the historic St. Mark's Hotel. And thousands of people have gathered today to protest against animal cruelty. Many of the protesters are encouraging people to go vegan, that the vegan diet is both as healthy and as healthy as a meat-eating diet, and even more so than that. And it also doesn't include the cruelty of our factory farming system. You're watching Act TV's live coverage of the Animal Rights March here in New York City, where thousands of people, as I said, are gathered to protest against cruelty to animals in all its forms, both in our entertainment, in our food supply. There have been marches all over the world simultaneously, not all today, but over the course of the last few days. And the march in the UK had, I believe, upwards of 10,000 marchers, the largest one they've had yet. And we're happy to bring you this live coverage, as we always do here on ACT TV. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on Twitter, wherever you are watching, if you're even watching on a different page, a sister page of ours, please like that page and please make a comment, retweet, share, wherever you are. Hi, everyone. We're here at the Animal Rights March. As you know, I'm Juliana Forlano. You're watching ACT TV's live coverage. We always bring you what's happening from the street. And I found one protester dressed as a cow, which I think is fabulous. And can you talk a little bit about what you're doing here today?
Well, I actually became a vegan about a year ago, and I saw a documentary on Netflix by accident.
Which one?
It was actually Vegucated. I thought it meant something else. I thought it was about diet and vegetables and learning to change your diet. And
by the end, you were like, oh my God.
Yeah, because it had like the PETA videos of like slaughterhouses. And I became aware that me buying grass-fed beef and cage-free eggs meant nothing, really. So
you were already trying to be responsible to animals in your purchases, but you found that those things meant nothing.
That's right, yeah, basically.
My understanding is that it's illegal to get footage inside of a factory farm, and journalists have been prosecuted. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I know that I do follow a couple of groups on Facebook that will occasionally get into law trouble because of that, because, you have to be careful about trespassing and stuff like that. But there's other ways to do things. Like, my favorite thing is to bear witness. I like to go to slaughterhouses. I like to be as close as possible to where they do these things and just sit there and watch.
Can you talk about what you've seen?
I have actually seen, animals be in basically conditions that you would never subject your own dog or cat to. I mean, if you like domesticated animals, you should feel the same for every other animal. They basically, do pee and poo all over themselves, and then they sell that meat to us to consume. And then that's how we get sick, and people wonder why. And I'm a nurse, so I know I deal with people with cancer every day. And I've witnessed change with their diet, so I believe it even more.
I've read, of course, everyone reads about their diets these days, and everyone's trying to avoid cancer. I think it's not very well known that cheese, which isn't a meat product, but vegans don't eat it, is also responsible for a number of health issues. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely.
I mean, talk about the idea that, it's not just eating the meat that makes you a vegan and why that's important.
It's not. As a matter of fact, a lot of people, when I try to talk to them about changing their diet, they say the only thing I can't give up is cheese. And
I feel that way.
Yeah. And
it's hard.
I've done a lot of research, and one thing, because I used to love cheese too. I used to love those dips that you get in the restaurants with the cheese and the chips and everything. But then I realized that the reason we like it so much is because they actually have actual pain narcotics in them. There's a compound that is...
Oh my God, I need a minute.
It is.
Wow.
It is.
So we're addicted to cheese. We're not just liking.
That's basically it. There's a compound that's very similar to morphine in cheese. And so you feel good when you...
All cheese?
All cheese. That's how it's prepared. So we can't give it up because we really can't. I mean, you have to detox of cheese, basically.
That is so interesting. Thank you so much for talking to us.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll see you again. Again, you're watching ACT TV's live coverage of the Animal Rights March, a march against animal cruelty here in New York City. where thousands of people have been marching from about 23rd Street after a rally with speakers that, if you've been watching long enough, you've seen, down right through the village, basically the heart of alternative eating culture and alternative culture as it might be. If you like this kind of coverage, if you like to actually hear from people on the street and not what a mainstream media person has to say, whether you agree or don't agree, if you find it interesting to hear alternative voices, no matter where you're watching, just do us a favor and leave a comment or like the stream or share it with your people. That's how we are able to continue to bring these streams to you. And what you're seeing now is a number of people, from the march standing. There's little kids here, which I find very, very adorable. Both the kids and the fact that they're here and they're learning about the democratic process. You're watching Act TV's live coverage of the Animal Rights March here in New York City, where hundreds, possibly thousands of people have gathered to march against animal cruelty in all its forms, be it in our food supply system, in our entertainment system, and any other area of life. Many people here are vegans and they're espousing a vegan lifestyle or a highly vegetable-based lifestyle. And I think it's really interesting to think about this. One of the things I've noticed about this particular march is the people here are really in it for the voiceless. Obviously, animals don't have a voice that speaks in words, and therefore all of these people are, speaking for a group that they're not necessarily part of. They're not animals, but they're speaking here for the animals, whereas many protests that we've covered are folks who are obviously directly affected by whatever the issue is, and they're coming out to fight that, and their allies come out to support them. But it's very heartening to see a group of people come out to speak for the voiceless.
We are animals. That's just a different kind.
Say that again?
We are animals. We're just a different kind. We're here to take care of each other.
How did that get so lost in our current, view of the world?
It's hard to say. It's a bad history.
Well, how about religion? Let's get into that.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
That's fine.
It's the religion.
Well, I think, religion says that, man is above and we have dominion, and that has trickled down to make a horrible system where so many animals are... so many living beings are treated horribly.
I think they misinterpreted it, because to me, to have dominion is to care for them, is to be responsible for their well-being, not to take advantage of them.
A lot of talk has been going on about the rise of the woman, the rise of the feminine. Do you think that with that rise, hopefully, of more women coming to power and more, women's ideals becoming what we're basing our society on little by little, but hopefully as that continues to build, do you think that will have an effect on what's happening here in terms of animal rights and the end to animal cruelty?
Well, I hope women make the connection, because we're not much different. I mean, the female animals today are treated as badly as the women have been in history. Yeah. I mean, most of the animals who are abused are females.
Oh, just like
and cows. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great sign. Can we get this sign? Hold on, let me see if we can get a video of this sign. Let's see if you can get ahead of our camera person. So they're making the connection here between feminism. As you can see the sign, feminist, meat, dairy, and eggs come from the hijacked reproductive systems of abused, exploited females. Be vegan. That's very interesting. I bet people don't make that connection.
No, they don't, and it's true. It's true. I mean, feminism, the idea of feminism isn't just isolated to female or to a gender. It's really about not exploiting anyone or not discriminating anybody or an animal. I mean, that's really the way I see it.
I'm glad. That is a very relaxing and truthful way of putting the idea of feminism. Because there's so many women who are like, no, it has to be like this, like that. And that's the best, most pared down, where it's all inclusive.
Exactly. It's all really ties together when you think about it. Exploitative. Anytime that something like animal abuse is allowed or taking advantage of another person or another gender, I mean, they're all a symptom of the same thing.
Have we seen under the Trump administration a expansion of cruelty in the different areas that the people here are protesting against today? Do you know about that?
I don't know that we've seen it. I don't know.
I know he is for deregulation of everything.
But I know that just the kind of attitude that our president currently exudes has really given the okay for people to be more kind of selfish and abusive and just kind of living however they think is right for themselves. So, yeah, I mean, I would think so. I can't name a specific policy, but I know just the attitude have changed. I think it's just, like I said, given the green light for people to really show their okay to show their worst side of themselves.
Thank you so much. Thanks for talking with us.
No problem.
You're watching Act TV's live coverage of the Animal Rights March here in New York City, where thousands of people are marching for the end to cruelty to animals, both in our food supply and in our entertainment systems and different areas of life. I thought that was very, very beautifully said about how President Trump, our last interview, one of the marchers, discussed how President Trump has unleashed the exact opposite of what the people here are marching for, which is basically a just and humane treatment of all living beings. Again, you may see and hear things when you're watching Act TV's coverage of live events that you don't see and hear on mainstream media. You may or may not agree with these things, but I think they're worth saying in the marketplace of ideas, and they're definitely worth hearing and worth sharing. So please leave us a comment if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on Act TV, or on any of our partner sites. Leave a comment there. It helps to continue to bring these voices to other people and get a variety of ideas in front of people's eyeballs. I personally love my job because it's very heartening to have large groups of people who are coming together to walk for, the humane treatment of living beings, be they people, be they immigrants, be they animals, be they fish, which I guess are still animals. Definitely still animals. Over the course of the week, there have been protests across the world, including a very large protest in the UK, numbering over 10,000 people for animal rights. So this is a movement, I believe it was only a few years ago that these marches started, and this is a movement that has gained an enormous amount of popularity and traction.
Listen to you, let me tell you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Tell me more about how great we are.
I think you're really great. I mean, I've been vegan for the past year on behest of my daughter, who came home and said she's not killing any more animals, and she.
How did she come to that? My parents didn't switch when I switched to being a vegetarian because I read Diet for a New America when I was young and I got a job at a job at like an organic grocery store.
Right.
And I was like, they had books, and I read that, and that was it for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not personally a vegan.
That you still pushed forward then, without the support that you needed.
Oh, I was used to it. That's personal.
I don't know. Were you brought up like me? Probably. We're probably from the same cloth. But she came home and said, I'm doing this. Watch What the Health, and then become vegan with me. And my daughter's a dancer, and she's really smart, and it's her world. And I just said I'd do it with her, and it's been a year now. And so I'd say I'm a little baby vegan right now. I can walk.
It's wonderful, actually, that you're sharing in values, that it brings you together. And that was, for me, it was basically the animal cruelty that moved me in this direction. And my name's Juliana. This shouldn't be about me.
Oh, it can be. It could be about you and me.
I'm a journalist. I'm not supposed to.
It's intersectional. It's supposed to be about all of us, right?
That's correct, including the cows and the chickens and the pigs.
Pretty awesome. So,
did it open up a new community for you to be a part of?
Well, I'm still trying to find my community because I do feel a bit isolated.
Why so? Are you in Iowa?
No, I live on the Lower East Side of Manhattan.
That's weird. You would think that the Lower East Side was like a hotbed of alternative thinking for a while.
Right. But I'm in my 50s and I work a full-time job, and so my day-to-day stuff doesn't actually include a lot of veganism. And so isolated meaning that I'm thinking about some radical ideas and shifting a lot and not having a lot of support doing that.
Well, so many people are actually doing that. I think, even in our politics, people are starting to embrace, a more humane politics and the need for that humane politics, including sharing and a shared wealth and, treating each member of our society, maybe including animals. I haven't really heard that. You don't hear that on the political stage very often.
No, I think that's probably the basis of all of it. If you can give the voiceless, compassion and rights, then I think that you can't actually assume that other people are less than, and you wouldn't be able to treat them uncompassionately. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things we try to, that's one of the things we try to do here at ACT TV is bring you. Well, I would love to. ACT TV, you can find us on Facebook at ACT TV or on Twitter at ACT TV. We are actually live, and we're live streaming this Animal Rights March here in New York City, and we're in the East Village, and we are live. Yeah, we're heading to Tompkins Square Park, a famous park for many reasons. Do you know why, other than the drugging? When I was here, it was like where heroin addicts would hang out.
Big movement. Yeah, Allen Ginsberg and all the rest. So, there's a lot that happened in this park, that's for sure.
Poets.
Different ideas. So.
That's great. We've come to a lot of marches, and I think this march is really striking me as something very special, especially because it is kind of hitting some points in history where this kind of thinking has been embraced, including walking down some of the streets in the village.
And excited to see us, actually.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That changed from when we were in Washington Square.
Oh, really? Seriously?
When we were in, not Washington Square, but when we were in Union Square, I saw a number of tourists kind of eyeing the movement and making kind of disparaging. And now people are basically standing here, hugging. I see hugging people. I see people just supporting.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. No, it's been a really awesome shift. I'm also I'm a family doctor, and so I've been thinking nutritionally, how to change things and stuff like that. So.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I think is it sort of there's the food pyramid, then there was the food I don't know what else, and they keep changing it.
That's something.
Right. Can you talk a little bit? I think there is this idea that if you are a vegan, you're not going to have the proper amount of the nutrients that we need to maintain our health. Is that accurate as a doctor?
No. People are probably just like now because they're not vegan.
So this is like propaganda from the meat and dairy industry that has us convinced we need milk.
Yes, yeah. There's been lots of studies done that have showed, the further away you get from an animal agriculture diet, what did you say?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? The further away you stay?
From an animal agriculture-based diet, the healthier you are from definitely the first world diseases. So there were lots of studies that were done in China and in rural Africa where people who were in the small towns furthest away actually had the least amount of heart disease, diabetes, high cholesterol, and most of that research had been squashed,
of course,
salt and dairy and animal agriculture.
Wow.
So yeah. So it's hard for me. I see all my clients who are, really sick, not getting.
So we basically already have a cure for cancer. It's not so much when you get it.
Yeah. Well, it's not exactly that, because I don't think it's the end all and cure all, and I just want to
of course,
caution people for thinking that somehow is the the way in which you're going to live forever, which is not necessarily true, but it does decrease it quite a bit.
Well, I'd like to just decrease the suffering until the end.
I think
we're all coming to an end at some point.
You're absolutely right. So we can decrease the suffering and decrease our own suffering. That's for sure.
Thanks for talking to us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'd love to follow you guys.
Oh, please do. Acttv.com.
Acttv.com.
Or acttv.org.
Okay.
Can I talk to you for a second? Hi, my name is Juliana. I'm with Act TV. Our camera person is here. We're actually live streaming the march today, and I haven't seen a lot of posters like yours, so I really am happy to. Maybe I was in the wrong spot, but trophy hunting.
Say that because actually the woman who painted this made 58 of them. They're all different, so you probably have seen them. You just didn't realize it was all by Irene.
Sure, that's true. But I think I've seen a lot of, there's just a ubiquitous amount of veganism posters. But trophy hunting is another obviously cruel thing. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yes, well, hunting for conservation is a deceitful and divisive foe. Like, just absolutely egregious that someone would think that hunting for conservation would be...
Yeah, hunting for conservation. That's like...
Crazy. So, I mean...
the Trump administration just opened up, I think...
The other side. So, obviously, there are many illegal trades done throughout the year, and Trump has rolled back all these regulations that would have helped animals who don't really have a say one way or the other with what's going on in politics. They, they're just living their lives and taking a life that isn't yours. I mean, how could you justify that?
I mean, the trophy hunting that we saw in the news, I think it was last year or the year before that was happening, and now President Trump is in the process of removing restrictions on, I believe it's either, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to Google. It's either wolves or bears. Do you know that?
There's so many.
There are so many.
Actually, no. Well, lynx, horses, pretty much anything that people don't even realize that. Our agricultural USDA actually goes out and euthanizes animals that are just in grazing cows' pastures way, just because they conflict for food source. And so actually our government is euthanizing mass casualties of so many different types of animals that we're just ruining our ecosystem.
Thank you so much for talking to us today. Thank you. Again, you're watching Act TV. I'm Juliana Forlano. We're covering the Animal Rights March here in New York City. A march of there was several hundred, possibly even 1,000 people marching down the streets in New York City, and now they've gathered at the corner of Tompkins Square Park in the East Village on 10th Street, and I believe we're on Avenue A in Alphabet City of the East Village. A very historic park where many new ideas, many alternative ways of thinking are often either birthed or discussed in this park. It's not 100% gentrified now. If you like Act TV's live coverage of protest march that we bring you, we cover as many protests, as many marches, at least on the progressive side of the spectrum, as we can cover with our resources. So if you like this kind of coverage, whether you agree, disagree, or are just interested, please like our page and leave a comment. Leaving a comment is the biggest thing that you can do if you're watching on Facebook to ensure that you and other people still get this kind of content. If you're watching on Twitter, obviously, share, follow, etc. And if you're watching anywhere else on one of our partner networks, do the same for them as well.
This is where Funko started. This is where the Funko started. There's the Joe Strummer Memorial down the park. See all the grass there?
Hey, what's up, man? Good to see you. Good to see your eyes. You look fantastic. Touring you. Yeah, amazing. You know Rena?
Just let these people walk as they want.
Is that car is turning?
Oh, yeah, they're that side. Smart. Hi, you're watching ACT TV's live coverage of the Animal Rights March here in New York City. I'm Juliana Forlano. Thanks for watching. We're wrapping up our stream and our coverage now. There have been several hundred people, possibly 1,000 people. It's really hard to gauge the numbers marching for animal rights. You can find out more information by watching the rest of the stream. Or, you know, there's been just so many organizations here, PETA, etc. And you can go to their websites and find out all about what they're marching for. There have been marches like this across the world, very, very popular, and they're up and coming. I think in the UK there were over 10,000 marchers within a day or two from today. So thanks for watching, and don't forget, wherever you're watching this, please like, share, tweet. That's how we can bring you these voices from the street. And stay tuned for our next live coverage of activism in the U.S.